Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Exit Wound. I'm your host, Melanie Thompson, a New York City-based survivor of sex trafficking and prostitution. Today's episode is going to get a little bit heavy. We're going to talk a little bit about recovery and what it means to truly rebuild your life. Now, oftentimes, as the two of you may know, right, there's this idea that you can rebuild your life one brick at a time, one step at a time, and it's a slow and steady pace. But the reality is that it could actually get really chaotic, right? You can take 10 steps forward and then something will randomly knock you back. So we're going to talk about those realities today. So joining me here today, I have two amazing survivor leaders, forces of nature. I have Gabrielle Prieto and Chantal La-Fon. Thank you guys for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. All right. So before anything, would you guys mind sharing for our wonderful listeners right here, how old you both were when you guys were trafficked? Just to set the stage.
I would say 17. I'll say 17. But I actually met my trafficker at the age of 15.
Because we all know how that grooming works, right?
Yes.
All right, get into it.
Yes.
And then for me, I was introduced to trafficking actually the age of 12. So preparing and thinking, right? I realized that when my first year of junior high school, there was a girl, she was 16. She was left back 4 times.
Wow.
And then I remembered other things, childhood memories came to be. And I realized now I can identify that she was being trafficked by her grandfather and her siblings. And it's familiar trafficking. But I came to meet my first trafficker at 15. Was stalked, recruited, manipulated, abducted. And then I met my second trafficker when I turned 21.
Thank you for sharing that. And the only reason I ask is because we have so many different survivors all throughout this podcast on so many different episodes. And I'm trying to get the world to understand the variety of age ranges that we have here. And even though there are different ages of entry for each of us, we all have some kind of commonalities in our stories. And I think that's really important for the public to recognize. So this episode, we're going to dig real deep into, and granted, we know that our lives up until this point were not roses and picket fences and fairies. But I want to talk a little bit, and I want to take us back to those beginning stages. First we exit. We have our initial exit, whatever that story is for us, however we get out of that. And then you have these bouts of confusion and isolation and those feelings. And then somewhere in the timeline, we get connected to a resource, a service, a family member, friends, I don't know, something happens. Now I want to talk about this stage where we get to this point where we feel like we're just now starting to rebuild our new life, right? I want to focus on that area because that's an area that we kind of skip in the timeline when we talk about the journey as survivors from starting in the beginning to survivor leadership. We often talk about the first initial trauma, and then we talk about the glory at the end of the tunnel. But we kind of miss this step right here where you're doing good. It's been maybe 4 months, 6 months, 2 weeks out, and you're doing all right. And then something knocks you back. So we're going to take it back there. So Gigi, I'm going to start with you. What would you say were some of the hardest parts for you about leaving the life initially? What was the most difficult?
So when I started thinking about exiting, I was already like late 20s, early 30s. And one of the 2 primary challenges I had were housing and employment, right? Because remember, the first trafficker I met at 15, I dropped out of high school. He took me out of high school, but I thought I dropped out, right? So what kind of job could I have gotten? Even if I went to HRA, I mean, a single person, no children, $115 a month for rent. Where was that going to happen?
Could you even go to HRA? Could you? So for those who are listening, HRA is our Human Resources Administration here. And this is the organization, the city organization that's supposed to fund us with things like housing voucher opportunities, some food rental assistance, blah, blah, blah. Could you even go at 15 years old? Are you allowed to go unattended? I don't think you even can.
Well, see, the first trafficker, we call him the hard knocks professor, right? But really, he was the gorilla pimp. He manipulated me to emancipate myself at 16.
Wow, that's okay.
So it gets deep.
It does.
Like you said,
I
we're
told you
about
we're gonna
to dig
get
into
deep
it.
in this episode. I told you. Okay, so housing, housing
employment.
insecurity, and employment insecurity was
On
some
top
of your.
of everything else. But those were my two major. And even when I finally found my strength to exit, like late 20s, early 30s, you know, that was still the thing. And I'm not really going to go into too much of that because we can talk about it a little bit further later.
Got you. Whew, that was heavy already, girl. We only 3 minutes in. I love it. Okay, Chantal, so this might seem like a crazy question.
Okay.
And I definitely know for people who are not survivors, this is going to definitely seem like a crazy question. But I'm curious to know, was there ever a time that you missed your trafficker when you first exited?
Well, that was the hardest part. Is that
talk to me.
I loved him. Remember, this is my man, right? And stuff. You doing everything, you know. So it's like it's not even just leaving the life. It's knowing that I'm leaving the person who I thought then that was gonna be it. It's me. This is how we're gonna do this. This is how it's gonna go. That was the hard part. That was the hard part. Imagine. And I started trying to exit real early, and so because when I saw jail,
Right. Yeah.
You weren't trying to go to jail, were
and
you?
I'm an immigrant, so you had the opportunity. I can't go to HR, elemental PE.
Right.
I can't do anything. So
Oh gosh.
I was like, wait, what?
You don't have the resources.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good place to, or rather, it's a really good thing to add into this conversation.
Yes.
You know, we oftentimes forget about some of the external barriers, right? In this episode, we're going to focus a lot on the internal barriers, but there are these external barriers outside that are out of your control that could prohibit you from progressing the way you really want to.
From becoming a vagrant, from being homeless.
Oh.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, man. That's insane. Okay, well, so I was asking you if was ever a time that you missed them? And, you know, I think our society, for the folks who work with survivors or no survivors, there is this shame or this level of, I don't know, there's some kind of shame that's placed on us that somewhat make us feel like we're not allowed to say, I miss my trafficker, or I missed him, or I miss my pimp, or I miss my daddy, or whatever. Like, and I think that
they weren't in a relationship.
Exactly.
And then, but even for okay, in my lived experience, I was never in a relationship with my trafficker, and even when I exited, I still found myself writing letters because I needed closure.
You still was in some type is a relationship,
right?
Yeah,
it wasn't. You
It's
know what
not
I'm
like-
saying?
yeah.
I wasn't emotionally with this man. I didn't fall in love. I didn't think he made it very clear for me in the beginning that this was all about making his money. And he made it very clear that I was inferior. However, when I exited, when I left, I'm writing letters to an unknown address, just writing, hoping that I'm gonna figure out what the address is one day, because I had questions that I needed answers to.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the part of healing. When we talk about our progress not being linear in this healing journey, I think this is the part that we don't want to talk about. We want to stray away from it because it makes us look bad to whoever. But this is the reality.
It took time, though, for you have to say that it took time for each and every one of us to actually be able to own it.
Yes.
It took time because I was
That's
ashamed.
important.
Yes.
I was, I felt like, oh my God, I was dumb. I was stupid. Oh my God, I got fooled and all that stuff. I really, let this happen to me. And I didn't know it. But there was things that led to that.
Exactly.
Being molested at the age of 2 and up.
Thank
You was already inquisitive with sex. You show gratitude and stuff with sex. So everyone went through something that led them to
That's real.
this type of,
Yeah.
outlet.
That's real. No, that's real. And you brought up a really interesting point. When we think about progress, life, where this whole podcast is talking about life after the life. But if this was the only life you've known, and I'm not even talking about the trafficking yet, I'm just talking about being exposed, being groomed, being sexually, sexually groomed for this kind of thing from a young age. The minute you get out, even if you try to turn your life around, it's not going to be a straight path.
It's not.
Because mentally, this is what's ingrained in our systems, in our nervous systems, in our psychological systems, in our, this is what we know. And I think that is a very interesting point. I'm curious to know, right? I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about addiction real quick. Okay. And I'm not even specifically talking about substance use disorder, right? I'm talking about addiction to the fast life, addiction to the pimp, addiction to the fast cash, addiction to not having a curfew, doing whatever you wanted. I'm talking about being addicted to the street culture or the, getting used to can we talk about that for a second? Just tell me, what are your thoughts about that in general? A lot of us talk about how we are trying to move our lives in different directions. And, we focus so much on we don't want to go back because of the harm. We don't want to go back because of the beatings and the rapes and all of these things, right? But there's a part of us, and I meet a lot of survivors, and you guys can let me know what your thoughts are. I meet a lot of survivors who say it wasn't always bad. There are parts of it I miss. I miss my friends in the life. I miss my girls. There's so many different experiences. And I want to highlight some of that because in order for society to understand why it's important to support a survivor's healing journey, I need society to know what the ins and outs look like and how complex the relationships really are. So I want to talk about what any of those kind of addictions are. Did you guys ever experience any of those? Was there any parts of the life that you missed or that was really hard to break away from?
I mean, for myself, even like the closure, right? And the addiction. I can tie those two together with the young blood pimp, right? That was the Romeo. So when he was stalking me, he already came in with the romance tale. And he was addicted to the money. And he was leading me to we got to get this and this is what it's about, right? But I think that's how I exited because he just happened to come across a couple of $1 million lawsuit, right? And when he had the first installment of $1 million, that's when I took off the glasses, the rose glasses. Because I was like, well, now what's the excuse? Why are we not leaving and getting that business we talked about? And why are we not going to that state that we're going to live? Interesting. Now we got the $1 million. I don't have to go out there anymore. What's up? And he loved the money, and he just loved getting innocent people and just taking them and breaking them down and rebuilding them.
That's interesting.
And then I started learning.
And for you, would you say that's when you realized that you were being trafficked? Or was that, what realization did that give for you in that moment?
In my time, we didn't know it was trafficking, right? At the age of 45 is when I found out my story and my narrative, my reality. And I'm only 9 years later in this movement, a part of this sisterhood that we have, right? So it's really hard for me. I get real nervous in these kind of settings to be like, wow, I was trafficked. It wasn't, all those child abuses, all those molesters, all the things, grooming, year after year after year. I was born into it. I lived it. I always thought it was me.
Yeah.
And I'm just one out of millions of women around the world. And I'm not crazy. Society's crazy. They normalize it. They glamorize it. They see it, and they just keep letting it go.
Thank you for that. No, I'm sitting here like, y'all could do my job. I don't need to be here right now. Chantal, what about for you? Have you ever experienced any addiction to any part of the life? Is there anything about it that you missed when you first exited that made it difficult for you to progress?
Like you said, it was like the traveling. We traveled,
That's real. Talk about it.
Come on, we traveled. We went to all these different places, the hotels, the this, you in LA, you Florida, everywhere. You're everywhere. So it's like you're doing what you want. You are cutting school. You're being glorified because no one from the outside really know what's going on.
Right.
They're just looking. And they're like, wow, you're leaving in this car, you're doing that and all that stuff. You know that you got your mouth working when you're in that car, though. And so it's so many different things. And like you said, the business. I was like, as much money as we were touching and stuff, I didn't really get to touch it. But open a store, do this, stash for this. But you just kept seeing more and more things not happening. You get that, it's a gaslighting, right?
Yeah.
And nothing, you're stuck. More females are coming in and out. There's the jealousy, the hate, the sabotage. And it's so much different things. And then you're young and you're like, but wait, he's sleeping with this girl tonight? Or he's doing that tonight?
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing for me was leaving was the girls, because it was just a different setting for us. Because as you know me, I'm just very kind and compassionate. So I was able to like manipulate situations where I took most of the violence and they were able to, because I'm a giving person, right? I've always been a giving person. I think that was the biggest thing, leaving them behind. So I would go back and then get them out and then go back.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I see what you're doing,
and because I just thought that I wasn't worth anything. That's all I knew all my life. I was nothing.
And that's, I could fathom with that. Because I thought that was it. And stuff like, how you said the stalking, he went so hard to get coming up to my school, doing this. Oh my God. Like you felt like he must really like me. So it's like that jail thing, y'all, was triggering. When I went to jail and I was locked up in Virginia and they looking at me like, she doesn't even look like she belong here and stuff. And he even called the tower of the Virginia jail. And so he was very...
Mine was like that too.
So that he was what?
He called, there's
like
the
they
tears
knew
of...
where to get you. Like, mine was like that too.
Because if in Virginia, it's like all the tiers are around and there's a tower in the middle. He called the tower.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God.
Whew, okay.
Yeah, let's breathe.
So, listen, I could talk with y'all for hours and just get lost in stories, man. But anyway, so I know when I think about some of the addictions, and I think that you both touched on this just now when you were mentioning like the stalking, but then also like traveling with you and like making it seem like they were coming after you, like they were trying to pursue you in a positive way. And I think part of some of the addictions I've seen is being addicted to the chase that people provide you, even if the paid sexual acts are fake, even if the sexual relationship is fake, you can get addicted to having everybody calling your phone 25 times. You can get addicted to the false dreams that your trafficker sells to you, right? Yes. This idea that, and again, every relationship with folks and their pimps are very different. But some of the things that I know are said, right? Things like, as soon as you do this, I'm going to take you out of here. Or we just saving up a little bit for this, for that, and the third. oh, we only doing this a little bit so that, you know, like things like that. Like you can get addicted to those false dreams. You can get addicted to the attention that he's giving you. You can get addicted to so many parts. But I'm going to switch gears. We're going to move on from that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to transition now to talking about relationships. And I'm not just talking about intimate relationships. I'm also talking about family relationships, relationships with your friends, because this is a part that I think when we're thinking about the trajectory of progress, mm-hmm. like I said in the beginning, random things can knock us back, and we don't know what that could be. We don't know until it happens. Mm-hmm. When we relapse, when we feel triggered, we like, oh, I thought I got past all of that already, right? So family and other relationships, friendships or whatever, can also be one of those things that can knock us back in that path.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, Chantal, I'll start with you. Can you talk about managing a toxic relationship after the life? And this could be any toxic relationship. Have you ever experienced a toxic relationship?
I was toxic myself.
Oh, talk about it.
Just honestly speaking, mm-hmm. Look what I came from. Mm-hmm. It was like, you know, survival of the fittest. You have to do what you have to do. And I'm yelling and screaming if I don't understand something. We fighting. I'm cursing you out. I'm still aggressive. And it's not even just that life. It's that life plus what I dealt with before that led me to be so easily manipulated into getting involved in that life. Mm-hmm. Family. Okay. My grandmother was not the easiest person to deal with. Mm-hmm. And so it's like she didn't, when they found out that I was molested, it came out. I remember her even saying, like, get over it already.
Yeah.
Wow. Have you had that response from family members or friends once they found out that you were trafficked?
I have a friend that thinks that I snitched on my pimp. Mm-hmm. My trafficker, mm-hmm. not understanding, like, you don't understand what I was going through.
Exactly.
But you're seeing us looking on, and you think that because out of the, you know, in the neighborhood, I would say in the area, it looked like, you know, he was on me and it's me and him, and I bagged the, you know, who everybody.
Exactly.
It's not, and I'm there telling like, girl, I'm afraid to have sex with him. I might catch something again.
Interesting. I hear that. Gigi, have you ever had any toxic relationships after you exited?
Yes. You know, and I like how you opened up my mind even from myself. Mm-hmm. When you said I was toxic. And it made me see I was toxic to myself as well, but in private. Mm-hmm. I'm the one in the scene that's making sure everybody's all right. Everything is okay. We don't need to beat today. We don't need to do this today. Everybody's lined up. We're going to do this. We're going to get it together, right? Mm-hmm. But then in private, taking a hammer and smashing my hand because this is domestic violence born into. See? Or taking 300 pills or doing every drug within an hour and drinking, like you on the bar, you know, they got the first, second, third tier. Like within an hour, I had 20 drugs in me and every type of liquor. And yet, here I am today.
Yeah.
You know, this is really interesting. And again, we're gonna digress a little bit, but I think this is an important point to raise here, because I said earlier in this episode that oftentimes we focus so much on all of these other factors, and yet somehow we still forget to talk about our own personal journeys. Now, when I ask you both this question about toxic relationships, right? And initially, I'm expecting that y'all are going to tell me something about, you know, boyfriends or relationships with other friends. But both of you guys mentioned toxicity towards yourself. And I think that that's not something that we highlight enough.
No.
Yeah.
And now it has me sitting here thinking about, you know, Mel, what are all the ways you're toxic to yourself? And I just want to take a moment to applaud both of your transparencies and sharing that kind of vulnerability. It takes a certain level of healing and acceptance of self and all the other things, to be able to speak to society and say, I gotta accept the role that I've played in my own hurt too. And I think that as we're speaking on the topic of progression not being linear, this contributes to that. This contributes to some of your downfall. We know that so many things can hinder us moving forward, especially when it comes to us coming out of the life, right? We know mental health and mental illness is a problem. Yes. And we know, like, I suffer with really bad depression and PTSD. I know that stops me from doing basic things during the week. We know that toxic relationships with intimate partners can hinder you moving forward. We know that, you know, the addiction to fast money, or the addiction to instant gratification, or the addiction to, you know, the false promises that we got from traffickers and pimps can hinder our progression. But it's also important, and I think this goes back to what I was saying about the addiction piece, something else that and now I'm going back to our questions, something else that we did not talk about is self-sabotage. And there is an addiction, and correct me if I'm wrong. Y'all let me know if y'all experience this, right? Experience this. We as survivors have gone through so much complex trauma that is so unfathomable to so many people, psychologists, blah, 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 right? And we have to get real for a second about the addiction we have to our own self-sabotage. Yes. And I know I can speak for myself when I say I have practiced negative self-sabotage for years. And I wasn't understanding how. I was putting myself in situations that I know wasn't good for me, right? But I was so addicted, and I know addiction has a positive connotation, but in this instance it's not, right? I was so addicted and so used to being treated like shit, right? Being treated like shit, being talked down to, being degraded, being purchased, being commodified, that by the time I'm 6 months out and I'm like, all right, I'm out of the life, I'm going to, you know, do the right thing. Mentally, I can't even keep taking steps forward, because when I could say to myself and I could say to y'all, I'm going to accomplish my goals and we not going back to that life today. But then I look in the mirror and I see the complete opposite of what I'm thinking. And I think that also is important to recognize as playing a role in what hinders our progression. Self-sabotage is something I think I personally have witnessed every single survivor I know experience or go through in their journeys, right? And it takes so many years for us to be able to, you know, start again, start fresh, truly 125% accept what has happened to us. Because we could say it, but do we really mean it? Do we really feel like we've accepted what happened to us with no shame or guilt, right? To let go of all those insecurities, to no longer hold on to the vulnerabilities that I think brought us comfort as young people or as youngins in this stage. So I'm really grateful to hear y'all responses to that, because now it got me thinking about how much self-sabotage has really become a barrier and a roadblock in our path to try to, you know, move forward with that.
Are we free from our insecurities though?
We may never be.
You know?
We may never be. And I always tell people healing is a lifelong journey.
Yes, it is.
People will always say, how do you heal? How did you heal from it? You know, how did you? And I think they want us to say, oh, okay, I did 15 sessions of therapy. I took medication and now I'm good. Check. It doesn't work like that, right?
Yeah, because healing's not really happiness. Some people are confused. They think you're happy you healed. No, I'm healing because I learned that these toxic behaviors and patterns, the way I'm thinking, the people I'm moving with, is not working for me anymore. So let me step to the side.
And that's hard. That's a hard realization, because what the part of healing that we don't talk about, and this is for anybody, but specifically for traffickers, for trafficking survivors, right? The part of healing that we don't mention is that when you heal and you actually begin to grow in the right direction, that also means letting go of half of what you knew.
Yes.
Your thoughts, your negative friends, your family members that are toxic, bad behaviors you have on yourself, a job that's keeping you down, a grandmother who's always commenting or something. You're like, And a lot of times it's easier to stay in the negative because
Yes.
that's what you ever heard
It's
the
familiar.
saying, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
Speak it.
Okay.
And you said it earlier.
You
Let's
said
get
it.
comfortable
Being
And
uncomfortable.
familiar.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Thank you.
it's insane to just think about this because I feel like I'm having my own little epiphanies right now, you know?
Okay, thank you.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
Line.
But it's the truth. But the reality is that, you know, when we talk about progressing in our life and trying to do better as survivors in that beginning stage, after you've done your initial cry and right before you get a good job or right before you, that gray area is so difficult to process. And I need the world to understand that in order to truly help a survivor, support a survivor's journey, in order to truly understand the actual nature of the linear, in order to understand the progression of a survivor's trajectory from the time that they were kidnapped, exploited, raped, whatever, to survivor leadership, they need to understand along the way, we got addiction, we got self-sabotage, we got beatings, we got, you know, PTSD, we have flashbacks, we got mental health illnesses, all of these things. And I don't think this is the part they want to hear about.
It's like our survival is like a labyrinth. It's not a straight path.
Of course not.
It's a labyrinth.
I think that people expect, and I mean, granted, I guess it's a little bit of a compliment on our part because we just wear this, you know, we wear it so damn well,
right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? But I think that people expect that survivor leaders went from like getting whipped today and then bam, they woke up tomorrow a boss. And I'm like,
but let's
y'all
talk
don't see
about
all
that.
of the waves that we be going
when I
through?
cried in a room to myself, like, my life is gone. I can't get a social. I can't get, just imagine.
But you make a very good, strong point. And I think that's because in the movement, there's a 1% of survivors. Those 1% survivors have become doctors, have their own nonprofits. They're working with the top officials and everything. They found good, healthy relationships and they are living and raising their children. When the 99% is, this is where we live, this is our neighborhood, these are the men that we're dating. The men we're dating are toxic, whether they're traffickers or not toxic.
Let me ask you this, going back to relationships. Your families. I don't know your backstories. I don't know what your family relationships or dynamics were like before you were trafficked. What are they like today? You don't have to get specific with names and all of that, but since you've exited, has it been difficult to trust? Has it been difficult to talk to your family members that now know about your trafficking experiences? Do you have relationships with, like, if you have children, do your children know about what you've been through? These kind of things. Like, what has navigating those relationships looked like?
As of right now, I have control over my boundaries and relationships and stuff, even with my family. I harbored resentment against my mother in the past because when she left Trinidad and left me behind, I didn't realize she was really trying to make a better life for us. You want your mommy and you want your daddy. My dad was had like a Rolling Stone, million of children everywhere. I think there's 14 of us, you know, and stuff. So it's like, you want your father. You know, I wanted that acceptance and all and everything else. That was the me that was broken, that did not know any better, that didn't think I was worth anything until somebody tells me I'm worth it. So that took time. Yeah. So as I was, you know, the therapy and the this and the time and the years that went by, family members would manipulate you if you give them that opportunity. Anybody will manipulate you if you give them that opportunity. But when I started growing and knowing my self-worth, that switch around. So my relationship with my mother, she gets on my nerves. But I'm in a way that is normal. A motherly way now. Yeah. Because I was able to understand and let go. And I was able to tell her. And understand and let go and think. And she's like, you know, you know, every time she used to cry, oh, my mother's so emotional, y'all. Oh, she is a drama queen. And she's like, I did my best and y'all this and that. And I was like, okay, all right. Then my father, he's just not there. He's toxic. So I had to love him and love him from afar and let him know. Yep. But once you have that realization, that's what makes it easier.
Gigi, what about you? Do you have any any familial relationships or friendships after you exited, once you realized what was happening to you and you got out and all of that? Was it difficult for you to navigate having friends, trusting people, talking to your mom or dad?
So for me, I'm going to say like at 45, understanding my story, that's when the light came. And that's when there was no more being suicidal. Yeah. And in that journey, I started saying I had to pick a side, right? So I had to put certain things down. So when it came to my sisters, you know, they were still in DV situations or they were still in substance. And I was just like, I can't be advocating and healing and being connected. So it was hard for me to walk away from them. It was really hard, especially because we got 20 years in, right? 20, 30 years in. What was hard for me to leave was I thought in the streets, I found my tribe because everybody was hurt and broken. Everybody was abused, you know? So now today we've healed from that, you know?
It's something that you said a little while ago that I think brings me to this point. You were talking about how difficult it was to walk away from people you love and care about because they were engaging in those behaviors, right?
Right.
And when we talk about our path being a labyrinth, when we talk about this not being linear and things that can serve as a barrier for us to heal properly, what comes to mind is, you know, put on your own oxygen mask before helping others, right? And I commend you. I mean, it's hard walking away from loved ones. It's hard setting that boundary for ourselves. But if it means trying to make this crooked path to healing straighter than it was 5 minutes ago, you got to do what you got to do. So
Yeah,
I'm proud that you did it.
After a few months, you'll feel better.
And hopefully they will too. And then when you're at a better place, you can come back, you know? So let me ask you this. We're going to shift gears. We're going to talk a little bit about self-doubt today, right? Because we know that in the beginning of this path, we know we have dealt with insecurities. We know that we have dealt with the feelings of missing parts of our addictions. We know that we have, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, we know that we miss the false promises, the attention, the traveling, right? There's so many things about the life we can miss. We didn't even touch on half of it, but we know all of these things. And we know that at the same time, we still don't want to go back. Yeah. Right?
Because of the danger.
This idea, right? So I before I even ask you about self-doubt, I want to ask you about that. Talk a little bit, just mention what comes to mind when I say that. You miss all these little parts, but you know the overall big picture is harmful and it hurts. What is it like trying to navigate? What is it like trying to press forward and keep going straight and leave everything behind, even though you still have attachments to it? How do you navigate that? Because it's a lifelong journey. We may not have found the answer yet.
We're still navigating through it. Everything that you have is a false image. It's not you. Because you're still lost. You're still broken. You're still needed. You're still, you know, you have that in the mirror. Like you said, you don't see what everybody else may see, even if it's something positive or negative. You're not seeing it. You're just like, why am I not loved? Why am I not happy? If I do this, I'll be happy. If I do that, I'll be happy. And I end up getting involved with a toxic person that I thought my fairy tale would have been like, okay, no matter what he's doing now, he's going to work and we're going to do this and we're going to build and we're going to that. Wow. Even as I say it, remember, that's my thought. I didn't even think for a second about what I'm getting myself involved with somebody else.
There go that sabotage. Right? And it's so unconscious to us. It's because we've been raised in this
way.
We've been raised in this, and it's very difficult to separate yourself. If I see, I don't know, I'm gonna just say a dead cat in front of me, right? it's easier for me to know to step over that cat.
Right.
Because I can see it. But if the dead cat is a part of my spine, right? It's hard for me to shake that off because it's a part of me. I can't see the toxicity or the danger. And that in and of itself, and this cat is representative of the toxic behaviors, the patterns, the vulnerabilities, the insecurities, the habits that we've built while we've been in the life, right? All of these things. That's the dead cat that's attached to our spine, right? And it is so difficult. And when we talk, like that's a hindrance right there. It's heavy. It weighs physically. And then every time you think, all right, boom, I'm out the life. I got a good job now. You feel that. Every time you like, damn, you know what? I dressed for work today. You look in the mirror and there go them insecurities.
Yes, it's
right attached to your spine, being like, I'm a little fat in that. And granted, everybody has insecurities, right? Everybody, all humans are like that. What makes survivors unique in this way, however, is that majority of the survivors have been dealing with things like PTSD, depression, anxiety, all of these diagnoses from what they've experienced. So if you couple just regular human feelings of insecurities and vulnerabilities and then add severe depression to that, or add a flashback of your pimp telling you that's why you ugly anyway, nobody's ever gonna want you the way I want you. When you start hearing those things and think about that, when you look in that mirror, all of a sudden that outfit you thought looked nice on you becomes you sitting on the floor, not going to work, not going to school, and doing nothing. And these are some of the things I want the world to see and understand about what could hinder our progress, right? We think we 6 months out and we got it. We haven't talked to a sex buyer in God knows how long. We haven't contacted our trafficker again. We're single. We're not in a toxic relationship. And it be that one time you about to walk out the door to go to work or do something with your life and you just look in the mirror and it just so happens you had a flashback. So when we talk about this journey, I digress. But when we talk about this journey, I want folks to understand that it is not a straight path.
It's not.
It is not roses.
It's not.
It is difficult.
It is very difficult.
It's difficult. It's hard and it hurts. And what you may not understand, and when I say you, I mean people who are non-survivors, what y'all may not understand is that what you think is common to you, what you think all of us go through, survivors have it 10 times worse.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
And I need them to understand how difficult that can be, right? I'm one of those people who suffers with really bad, severe depression. And something that I go through, for example, I'm on my way to work. I'm doing well. I don't got no sex buyers. I don't got no pimp, right? I think I'm chilling. And my shoelace is untied. I tripped a little bit in public. Instead of me just leaning down and tying my shoe, I have now in the last 25 milliseconds went down a rabbit hole in my brain of how much I'm a failure, how much nobody can look at me, how I'm so ugly. Nobody should be like staring at me right now. I'm not worth anything. And that's not normal, right? It might be for someone with depression, but then I here goes my pimp's voice in the back of my head. See, you stupid. That's why you wasn't ever gonna be nothing. That's why you should have stayed with me. You should have never went to school. Who forgets to tie their shoe? That you see what I'm saying? And people don't understand that can happen at any point of any day of any week.
Can I piggyback off of that? Yeah. Imagine if you get into a marriage like that. You gotta really think about it. This is deeper in so many different ways. If the person doesn't try their best to keep healing, keep moving, it is hard.
Oh, child, I think I preached a little bit just now. But
No, but you made some valid points, you know. True. It's like, how do I self-sabotage? You know, people look at me and the way I speak, my clothing, my jewelry, my eyeglasses, and they're like, wow, she's so strong, she's resilient, right? But they don't realize that a person I work with for months, years, right? Every time they say, oh, GDR. And then that one day, they're ducking. And I'm like, oh, you want to go to lunch? They don't realize what is going in my head, that rabbit hole. They don't realize that I'm getting pulled back to I'm worthless. I'm not important. I don't matter. and how hard it is that when we're in that rabbit hole and we got to keep going and pushing forward, what we got to do to get ourselves up, because at the end of the day, we only depend on ourselves.
Yeah.
Who's going to help us out of there? We got to crawl our way out, even though we tripped our way in.
That's nice. I like that.
That's going to be used on Instagram.
Yes,
just letting
we're
you
gonna
know.
crawl our
right
way
now.
out. Even we tripped ourselves. That's why I like working with you, G. That's what I'm talking about. See what I'm talking about?
All right, so
I love you, ladies.
As we're drawing to a close, I want to ask y'all: is there any point? Because now we talked about addiction, we talked about self-sabotage, we talked about missing our traffickers, having relationships with our traffickers. We talked about kind of navigating hard family relationships or avoiding this conversation with our current families, right? Not telling them about our past. We talked a lot about what it's like to try to keep moving forward, but then something randomly bringing you back, or random triggers at any point in the day. So as you two are now in your lives now, do you ever have moments of feeling like you're not enough? And I'm going to say when you do, because I think everybody feels like that. When those feelings come up, how do you handle it?
I take a moment for myself and I see my accomplishment and I take my time. I've learned to have patience with myself, because a lot of the times we'll feel like we're catching up. We need to catch up, right?
Yeah.
We were behind in so many different things. Like you said, you left school so early, right? I feel like I was behind, especially with my green card and being able to think. So it's like I take a breather. I take a breather. Just a simple breather. I look at my son. I just look at everything and I know I'm going to do this. There's more. I'm going to look back. I'm going to enjoy every minute with every person I connect with every smile, every this. I'm going to understand that I could love from far. I could love from close. I could just enjoy my life. It's hard, yes, but I'm not going to ruin what I have left to do.
Yeah.
And waste any more time. If I need to pray on it, if I need to talk on it, if I need to... That's what I'm going to do. If I need to just meditate for myself and just whatever, breathe.
Hold yourself, hug yourself. That's real. Gigi, what about you? What do you do? How do you navigate feeling when you feel like you're not enough?
So, for me, I have a lot of fear, right? And I don't portray it. So, what I learned over the last 9 years was I walked around with that F on my chest like the scarlet letter.
We did.
Right? And one day what I did was I literally took it off, put it on a piece of paper, and I said, what can I do? I'm going to disassemble it. I had 3 sticks. What can I make with it? I made an A. And then the light bulb went off again. And I was like, that A was because I was alone. That A was because I was afraid. That A was because I was alone, afraid, and ashamed.
Shame.
Thank you.
Don't forget that.
Right? So what I did was I re-put it together. And I said, I always wanted to be in education. I always wanted to learn. That I'm always trying to catch up to that. To this day, I'm going to be 90 before I become a doctor, right?
Yeah.
So then I gave myself that I was approved. I was acknowledged. And I was accepted.
Oh, see? You hear that?
And I love myself. I date myself. I treat myself very well.
I do.
Do you guys have any advice right now for survivors who might be listening to y'all right now? Survivors who may be feeling like they're not enough. Survivors who may be feeling like, why can't I just get it right? I keep trying to do the right thing, but I keep going backwards. If they're listening right now, what is something that you would want to tell them? What advice do you have for them?
Don't stop. Don't stop. And try not to forget the skills you had. Each and every one of us had a skill that we survived. Everybody goes through something. Everybody's a survivor, right? We all know that, right? Good. But the thing with us is that we were resilient. We persevered so many different stuff to be here right now.
That's right.
So dig deep and be like, wait. I may not be, in the best of this or that, but I sure got away from him. And I'm here right now. And even if it was 5% of that person not calling, no more being bored, and that was just the 5% that I began with, I'm going to try to make it a 10%.
I love that.
What else can you do? Look at the skills that we had. We did hospitality, right? Because we had to make those people feel
we
at
have
home.
an episode talking about this exact thing about transferable skills.
Yeah.
Tune in for that one in a week or two.
Oh, wow. But yeah.
It's the truth.
We did hospitality, right? And stuff. Okay. Then we had to make sure that we had self-presentation.
I call it the actress, but go ahead.
It's the truth, right?
We got the
you had to
Hollywood
perform.
script.
You had to perform, right? You had to perform and all that stuff. So all these, I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm going to use this for myself because that money, I didn't get to touch it.
Me neither.
So you know what? And if I was able to do that for someone else, I'm going to go and I'm doing it for myself.
Exactly.
I love that.
That's how I see it.
That's kind of how I take my power back now. I'm like, all them things you said that I wasn't going to be able to do. Well, what do you know? My advice to any of my fellow survivors that might be listening right now is remember that yesterday you were asking the universe to be where you are right now. And somebody once told me that, or maybe I heard it somewhere years ago, and it stuck with me because I'm like, just 2 days ago, I'm like, damn, I just wish I had just a little bit of this. Or I wish that I was just, let's give me 1 day of freedom, right? Just 1 day. And that day might come in 2 days. I might have my freedom today, but I'm like, damn, now I really wish that I just had a car, right? Like, but I got to remember to myself, 2 days ago, I was asking for this 1 day of freedom. And now I got it. And I think that is what helps me keep going. Gigi, what advice do you have for some survivors that might be listening?
To survivors, you have that root in there, that seed that planted from all the pain. You want it to grow. Just clean out the soil. Get out the weeds. And for me and the direct services that I do, what works is we do that first mentoring pack of the 3 A's, negative to positive. But it is about taking it one step at a time. Because I built the foundation. I tell them, today we're going to go to the park and we're going to go on the track and we're going to walk around that track. And every day I'm going to be here at the same time waiting for you. You're not going to show up. But you're going to show up a month later, I'm still going to be there. And then if you give me a week straight, what we're going to do, we're going to go to Home Depot. And then we're going to go down the aisles and we're going to collect cement, the shovels and everything. And we're going to mix that cement. And my organization and my program, we're going to build that foundation because of the different services that you're obtaining. And then we're going to build the empire. And we're going to fill the floors with the dreams. And then you're going to get connected to this resource and that. And you can do it because at the end of the day, everything that you're giving out, you can keep it for self. You can really keep it for self.
I love that. All right. So to close out the show, now, the work that we do is difficult. Yes. Oftentimes heavy. I did say we was going to get heavy in this episode.
And crying with your makeup on.
It's all right. You still look good, girl. Don't worry about it. All right. Listen, I told y'all we was going to get a little heavy, a little deep, you know, and the reason that I like to close out my shows like this is because even if we weren't working in the fields that we work in, being a survivor is hard enough.
Yes,
right?
Itself.
And just talking about this part of our timeline to where we are today, we're not even talking about all the hard stuff we go through now, right? We talking just about that one time 5, 6, 10, 3 years ago, right? And how difficult that was just to get up and look at yourself in the mirror every day. Just to make sure that you bathing every day and not curling up in a ball and avoiding the world, right? Being a survivor is difficult. And I think that we don't get enough appreciation for it. And I don't think that we as survivors focus enough on our small joys, right? So to close out, I just want to ask y'all to tell me one way that you use creativity as a form of resistance. One thing that you either do that brings you joy, that's unrelated to trafficking and prostitution, or one thing that you do for self-care, or something that you do that makes you happy. And that could be an actual creative skill, or it could be something that you create to be creative. So tell me something that brings you joy.
Okay. So I'm very creative. It was something that helped me throughout my whole life, right? So I'm into everything. So I create these workshops that we do anything from coloring to embroidery to photography. I mean, I have 20 workshops. Oh. And I'll walk down the street and I'll see something I'll see a squish flower, and I swear to God, I'll pick that up and I'll turn it into an art piece.
Chantal, how do you use creativity as
creativity? I shop and I treat myself nice, and whatever else I'm doing, I make sure that I know that I'm worth it. I cherish myself because that's something that we were not supposed to do.
Exactly.
You understand? But you was cherishing that money I was making though, so I'm cherishing myself each and every day, and that's it. It's nothing else. Self-gift. And stuff, so that the people around me feels the same love. I cherish them too. Mm-hmm. There's no one that's around me that does not feel cherished when they're with me.
Mm-hmm. Date yourself, love yourself, draw, paint, pick up squish flowers.
Let it go, yeah.
whatever makes us happy. Gigi, Chantal, thank you so much for joining me today. You two are absolutely amazing. This was an amazing conversation. To all of y'all listening and watching, thank y'all for tuning in. And make sure you catch us next week where we'll be talking about no money, more problems. All things money insecurity with one of our return guests. I won't name names, but hopefully we'll see you there. Bye.